The dumbest, most expensive thing a grown man can do is skim page 4 of a 14-page legal document, decide it probably means what I want, then build a whole resort like the lake is included in the bundled deal. That's not confidence, that's a spiritual allergy to reading. And in my case, it turned into a $24,090,000 lesson, paid for, ironically, by the guy who wouldn't slow down long enough to read one sentence. I bought the lake in 2019, not the shoreline, not the cute little view, not the right to take Instagram photos from a dock you don't own, the lake itself. The lake bed, the water column, the riparian buffer, the whole messy, beautiful, legally complicated bowl of it. The title file is a brick, 14 pages of riparian rights language that reads like it was written by someone who didn't trust human nature, because it was. And page 4 says one thing so clearly you could tattoo it on your forehead in mirror text. Shoreline owners get non-commercial access. That's it. No commercial use, no fee-based activities, no community experience, no structures driven into my lake bed not without my written consent. Fast forward to August 2023. I leave for a federal contract in Alaska, 14 months, water resource management work up in the Susitna River Basin, the kind of job that eats your weekdays, chews your weekends, and spits out a version of you who forgets what normal daylight feels like. Before I went, my partner Dana and I agreed on something simple. She'd manage our Lake Harrow property, handle routine stuff, and call me if anything got weird. And she did call 3 times in 3 weeks, late September. Each time, I called back when I got signal, and she'd describe HOA friction. You know the kind: letters, boundary complaints, somebody acting like a survey marker is a suggestion, not a fact. Because here's the setup: we own the only non-HOA parcel in the Lake Harrow watershed. The Lakewood Ridge Community Association on the eastern and northern shoreline, 340 acres of lots built in the early 2000s, all of them with riparian access rights, not ownership. Historically, the HOA was boring: lawn rules, paint colors, gate codes, that kind of suburban paperwork religion. So when Dana said, "They're pushing again," I did what every exhausted person does: I minimized it. I assumed it was the usual low-level tug-of-war between people who feel like the lake is a community amenity and the deed that says, politely, no, it isn't. I was wrong. On October 12th, I drive back from the field office, clear my equipment, file my final docs, and I'm suddenly on a plane from Anchorage to Charlotte with a layover in Seattle, feeling that weird whiplash where you go from glaciers and work boots to airport carpet and overpriced snacks. Coming in on descent, the Carolina light through the window looks unfamiliar for half a second, then my brain remembers who I am again. Dana meets me at the gate. She doesn't hug me first. She hands me a coffee like it's a medical device, takes my bag, and walks me to the car in silence. We're already on I-85 South before she speaks. "I need you to see it before I tell you how bad it is," she says, hands tight on the wheel. "Because if I tell you first, you'll try to process it, and you won't process it correctly." I look at her like, how bad are we talking? She just goes, "Wait." The access road to Lake Harrow turns off the county highway a few miles south of the Lakewood Ridge entrance. It's a 3-mile gravel track through second-growth hardwood, single lane, private, gated, titled with our property. I've driven it 100 times, that familiar sequence: little curbs, the creek crossing at the 2-mile mark, then the long straight where the trees thin and the lake starts flashing through the treeline. Only this time the treeline opens and my stomach drops. Cabins. Not a cabin. Not a cute cluster. A development. Identical prefab units lined along the eastern shore like somebody copy-pasted a vacation brochure across the woods. Each one set back maybe 30 feet, each with a deck facing the water like it's posing for a listing photo. Behind them, a paved loop road, a 2-story lodge, a parking lot, and then the part that made my vision go hot. A concrete boat launch poured straight into my lake bed. There's a sign at the lodge entrance, same stonework and bronze letter style as the HOA's main monument sign, like they're branding it as official. It says, Harrow Lake Retreat, a Lakewood Ridge community experience. I sit there in the truck for a full minute, not moving, because my brain is trying to decide whether this is jet lag or a felony with landscaping. Then I get out and walk down to the western shore, our side. The water looks normal, shockingly clear, like the lake is innocent in all this. Our shoreline is untouched. The buffer is intact. The waterline is where it's always been. And across the lake the eastern shore is unrecognizable. I start counting rooftops the way you count breaths when you're trying not to panic. 47 visible from my angle before the shoreline curves. I walk a little, count again, 68 before the curve hides the rest. Dana says quietly, 199. I go back to the truck, pull out the folder I always carry, deeds, survey, riparian rights instrument, land trust docs. I flip to the riparian rights instrument. 14 pages recorded in 1987, back when the original landowner subdivided the shoreline parcels but kept the lake. And I turn to page 4. Section 3, subsection B. Non-commercial recreational use only. No commercial enterprise, no fee-based activity, no revenue-generating use of the water surface, lake bed, or riparian buffer without the express written consent of the lake bed owner of record. I look up at that lodge again, those cabins, that concrete ramp sitting in my lake bed like it pays taxes there, and I feel something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet. Something colder. The kind of calm that comes right before you start calling professionals. Dana tells me, they've been operating 8 months. Opened in February. Cabins started filling in March. What did the county say when you objected? They said the structures are on HOA land, not the lake. They don't regulate what the HOA does on their own parcels. And she says it with this exhausted little crack in her voice that tells me she tried. Filed 3 times. Took photos. Made noise. Got dismissed. I say, the county's right, the cabins are on their land. That's not the issue. She looks at me. Then what's the issue? I point at the boat launch. The issue is my lake. That night I call the HOA president, Garrison Priel. 58. Developer type. Hospitality background, resorts, vacation rentals, the whole turn nature into a revenue stream career path. He answers on the 3rd ring, smooth as a man who thinks the world is a customer service desk. I give him my name, my property address, and I say, I just got back from a 14-month federal contract. I'm standing on the western shore of Lake Harrow, looking at a resort built on a lake I own. I need you to explain what legal basis you use to build a commercial operation on restricted riparian rights. There's this half-second pause, the sound of his mental script recalibrating. Mr. Calloway, he says, I understand you have concerns. The riparian access rights attached to the Lakewood Ridge parcels authorize lake access for the community. The resort infrastructure is entirely on HOA land. Cabins, lodge. Road system. The boat launch is a minimal infrastructure improvement consistent with our rights. I cut in. Did you read the riparian rights instrument before you built 199 rental cabins on my lake? My attorney reviewed the applicable. No, I say. Did you read it? Longer pause. Mr. Calloway, my attorney confirmed. Page 4. I say, and my voice goes calm again, dangerously calm. Non-commercial clause. It explicitly prohibits revenue-generating use of the water surface, lake bed, or buffer without written consent of the lake bed owner. I am the lake bed owner. You didn't contact me. You didn't ask. You built a commercial resort. You've been selling lake access at $285 a night for 8 months. Silence. Thick silence. And the boat launch, I add. That's a permanent structure on my lake bed. You don't have permission. You never asked. He finally says, smaller, I'd want my attorney to review the instrument you're referencing. Have your attorney call mine by Monday, I tell him. Her name is Elena Marsh. Then I hang up, and I just stand there on the shore while the lodge lights click on across the water, warm and golden, cabins lighting up one by one like nothing's wrong. Guests laughing, doors slamming, kayaks squeaking on a dock. People paying money to use something that belongs to a stranger they've never heard of, because the brochure told them it was included. Elena answers when I call. Water rights attorney out of Raleigh, helped structure my purchase back in 2019. When I say, someone built a commercial resort on my lake, she doesn't laugh. She goes quiet in that way attorneys do when they're already building a case file in their head. Tell me everything, she says. I do. I tell her about the cabins, the boat launch, the floating dock, 340 feet of it, anchored down with steel pins driven into my lake bed. I tell her about the marketing private lake access, kayak rentals, guided fishing. And she says almost gently, Nate, the boat launch is lake bed trespass. That's not an HOA argument, that's private property. And if there's a discharge pipe, stormwater runoff, into the lake without permits, we're not just in civil court, we're in state enforcement territory. That's when it stops being a dispute and becomes a problem. We pull everything. Marketing materials, booking listings, brochures Dana grabbed from the lodge like she was collecting evidence at a crime scene. I hire a hydrographic surveyor, David Core, because I've worked with those teams on federal projects and I know what good documentation looks like. He runs sidescan sonar, sub-bottom profiling, shoreline buffer measurements, and his report lands on my kitchen table like a hammer. The boat launch wasn't 30 feet, it was 31 feet and change. 847 square feet of concrete on titled private lake bed, basically the footprint of a small house embedded in my water like they were trying to pour themselves permanent permission. The dock system? 22 sections, 340 linear feet, 44 steel helical pins driven an average of over 4 feet into the substrate. Not temporary, not minimal. That's marina grade. That's we're here to stay. And then the discharge pipe, an 18-inch corrugated outlet submerged 4 feet below the surface, dumping runoff from parking lots and roads straight into the lake for 8 months. The water samples near the outlet showed discoloration, elevated turbidity, elevated conductivity, and when the state lab results come back, they're exactly what you'd expect when someone treats a lake like a storm drain, fecal coliform over recreational standards, nitrogen and phosphorus spikes. Suspended solids the outlet cove, basically telling the truth in numbers. Elena files in late October. Civil injunction. Lake bed trespass. State environmental enforcement. 3 fronts, 3 clocks, all designed to squeeze the timeline before he can spin up another excuse. And here's the twist, the part that made me stop seeing this as me versus the neighborhood. The HOA's internal records come in under subpoena, and Elena calls me, voice sharp. Nate, they asked him more than once. Turns out, back in March 2022, before any ground was broken, board members asked, on the record, who owns the lake itself? Have we contacted them? One woman, Teresa Wald, pushed hard. She voted no. Then she resigned in December 2022, and in her resignation letter she basically wrote, I'm not putting my name on this because the legal questions aren't resolved. Another board member, Roger Falk, kept saying, we should call the lake owner. He voted no too, and he stayed on the board because he believed being inside was better than being outside. Roger eventually called Elena himself not to protect Garrison, but to cooperate. He gave notes, emails he'd sent that Garrison ignored, the whole paper trail of a guy watching a train roll toward a cliff and being unable to grab the brake. So it wasn't just negligence. It was willful, the kind where people around you wave red flags and you keep driving because you've already pictured the profit. The state moved fast. Notice of violation. Pipe ordered plugged within 72 hours. Dock permit denied because, surprise, you can't get a permit without the lake bed owner's written consent, which I never gave. Then the judge grants the preliminary injunction. And the order is surgical: no marketing lake access, no lakefront, no paid kayak rentals, no guided fishing, no guest experience involving the water, nothing. Overnight, the bookings collapse. 71% of forward reservations cancel in 48 hours. Because without the lake, they're not lake cabins. They're just cabins in the woods. 3 days later, Garrison shows up at my door at 6:30 p.m., alone. No attorney. No assistant. The same man who was smooth on the phone is now standing on my porch with that tight face people get when a spreadsheet turns into a nightmare. I'd like to talk about a resolution, he says. I look at him and ask, one last time, did you read the instrument before you built this? He doesn't answer. I tell him, everything goes through my attorney, and I close the door because some conversations are only useful when they happen in writing. The settlement takes weeks. The evidence does most of the talking. In January they sign. Total, $24.09 million. Removal of the concrete boat launch. Extraction of 44 steel pins from my lake bed. Buffer restoration along 2,100 feet of shoreline. Water quality remediation and monitoring. A recorded covenant slapped onto those shoreline parcels so no future developer can pretend page 4 is ambiguous. And the best part, the part my body remembered as relief. On March 3rd, I'm standing at the water's edge when the salvage barge comes around the curve. Gray morning. Flat light. The lake surface still, like it's holding its breath. The crew drops anchor, the hydraulic hammer starts, and across the water I can hear concrete fracturing. Thud, pause, thud, like the lake is finally getting a splinter pulled out. They lift the submerged slabs in chunks, swing them onto the barge, stack them like shame. Then they spend the afternoon reversing the helical pins, one by one, 44 times, twisting steel out of my lake bed like unscrewing arrogance. At 4:47 p.m., the crew chief calls the last pin clear, and something in my chest unclenches that I didn't even realize was locked. Dana stands beside me, staring at the eastern shore where those 199 cabins still sit in the treeline, empty now, like a ghost town built from entitlement. And I say quietly because it's the only sentence that really fits. You can build whatever you want on your land, you just can't build a business on mine. That's the lesson that stuck with me. Not some inspirational quote, not some heroic speech, just the bitter little truth you learn when you watch power try to cosplay as ownership. A lot of people don't actually respect boundaries, they respect consequences. They'll assume, they'll stretch, they'll rebrand your property as a community experience. They'll smile while they're doing it, and they'll only stop when something real pushes back. Paperwork, judges, state agencies, a deed that doesn't care how confident you sound on the phone. So here's my question, and I genuinely want to hear what you think. If someone builds a business on something they don't own, because they assumed they could, what's justice supposed to look like? A fine, a settlement, jail time, or letting them lose everything they built? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me where you stand on revenge versus accountability, and if you've ever had to defend something that was legally yours but socially everyone's. Share that story too, because I promise you're not the only one who's had to fight a smiling thief with paperwork.